So I'm gonna pass on to Catherine. Catherine, you're gonna have to unmute yourself, and if you want to show
Can you
video,
hear me now? Can you hear
yes,
me?
we can.
Oh, good. Ready? Hi, my name is Catherine Marshall, and I'm a pediatric stroke survivor's mom. I was thinking about that. That was a title I came about complete surprise. And as we're celebrating Mother's Day this weekend, I thought I'd share a mother's story. My son Payson was 9 years old at the day at the beach with his twin brother, frolicking in the surf, and something happened. The doctors thought he might have suffered a concussion, misdiagnosed, and 3 hospitals later, I was told that Payson had suffered multiple strokes. And in that instant, life for us had changed. The word stroke is something I just couldn't get my head around, especially at that time when many nurses and even some doctors weren't aware that kids have strokes too. My little family and I were traumatized. It was very scary, new world. There was so much to learn and so much uncertainty. Doctors, scans, second and third opinions, more scans, all while trying to navigate the maze of a healthcare system. As a parent, I needed to be strong for both my sons and not show my fear. But I couldn't find any emotional support for me or my family. So after 3 years of searching for a doctor who had experience with strokes, pediatric stroke, or was even willing to take Payson on as a patient with a stroke syndrome, I moved us here to Boston. And after 5 strokes, my son Payson is now thriving and starting high school this fall. We are so blessed to have found Dr. Patty and her pediatric stroke program at Mass General. It's through Dr. Patty and her team, tireless effort in the stroke clinic and with creating this educational program offering parents, patients, parents, and families from around the world this much needed workshops. I also very importantly, I don't want to forget, their ongoing research on pediatric stroke. This month, as we celebrate stroke awareness, please help us to continue this important work by making a donation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for sharing your story. And I know a lot of people in the group could echo that experience and a lot of the fears and uncertainties, mostly at the beginning. And I see the ages of the people in our webinar, and there are many early young stroke thrivers right here. So with that, I think we're gonna open it up to questions, and I see a couple of them will be able to, I think, be answered. And I would, Maddie and Mara, you guys can decide if you have contributions. Both, please go ahead. So I'm gonna call on Trisha from Rhode Island. Do you want to ask your question?
You're muted, Trisha.
Sorry. Hi, Dr. Marcelino. My son just recently mastered the scooter, which is amazing, and he's good enough at it that he can like take it to the park and ride with friends when they're on their bikes. But we were getting rid of his balance bike because it's too small and because he wasn't going anywhere with it last year, so we moved over to training wheels. His right foot has to be strapped to the pedal because it won't stay on when he's on his training wheel bike, so we have to stay next to him, which doesn't give him much freedom because, you know, we're just not that fast. And so he saw me getting rid of it and he wanted another balance bike, so I bought him one. And I think he's going to master it quickly because now he has no fear of going as fast as he possibly can. But then what? Because his foot won't stay on the pedal and we can't safely put him on a regular bike with his foot strapped to the pedal.
So I would let him have his own time with the balance bike and then see. He may find his way to keep his foot on the pedal. But there are other people posting here to experiment with something grippy. There also are baskets that the foot can slip into and out of that adults use. And he might be able to learn how to get his foot in and out. And that might be enough support, but he can still take it out. So I would partner with him to say, this is a problem we have to solve if you want to learn to ride this bike. And we're going to try this and we're going to try that. And here's some duct tape and, just.
Our PT told us long term, she expects that because of how well he's progressing, he'll eventually be able to keep his foot on the pedal. But that's a long term goal, she said. So I was like, well.
Yeah. So Orion, when he was 3 and 4 years old, always had his foot strapped and he didn't like it. And his toes were out. And actually recently I encouraged him to try it with and without his AFO and see which feels better to him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tricia. And I think there was another question that of a similar kind, and it was Kate. She is the parent of a 3.5-year-old. So Kate, do you want to ask your question? Is a very good follow-up to this one.
Sure. Thank you for having this webinar. And I was just curious. So we have, it sounds like from the comments and from what Tricia was saying, a lot of similar things where my daughter, she struggles to keep her foot on the pedals, and similar with her hands. So she can't grip with her fingers. If we put it on, it tends to slip off pretty easily, and she gets really frustrated when it falls off. So I'm wondering if maybe we should switch from a bike to more of a scooter if people have had success with that. I haven't tried that yet. We tried getting her like a little go-kart. So instead of a bike, she was in more of a sitting down chair style, 4-wheeled pedaling cart. And with that, the struggle, I mean, she can hold on with one hand and she's fine. And we do have the pedal strap, so there's not like a tipping, danger. But then her knee on her right side swings in and keeps hitting the steering wheel. And so then she gets frustrated that way. And so I'm I want to let her try different things, and we haven't tried a scooter yet. So I'm just wondering if maybe that might be the next option, or if other people have had similar experiences.
Mara or Brian, also I know you're in the call. If you have any thoughts, I do have a couple of thoughts about this. So a scooter, for the hands, it does, because you can almost do it with your weight that you can turn. So you don't have necessarily to have your both hands separate enough. And in the bike, you do need that. So a scooter could be a really good, interesting experiment for her. Going from a tricycle kind of position with the feet up to the bicycle type of position is usually two different kind of learning plans. So just be aware that those two are not necessarily going to complement each other. They're fun, so I wouldn't take it away. And they used to be said that tricycles really delay you on your biking, whatever. And that's completely anecdotal here, because that's not what we're trying to look for. We're trying to look for experience and experiments. And so it will be, the scooter definitely something to try. You may wanna, there is some balance bikes that the back wheel is a double wheel. So it's not completely a balance bike, but it has, they call them, some of them are called mini bikes and stuff like that. I don't have brands or anything, but the back wheel is not training wheels, but it's thick enough and there's nothing in between. So that gives a lot of stability. And it will probably allow for a lot more play with that foot that may come to the side, it's kind of even on the safer side probably than the scooter, if you want, as another thing to try. The one thing that I wanted to say about when the kids are doing this kind of thing. So I told you that when there is brain injury up here, there is release of a reflex in the spinal cord, and that's where the catch and that kind of spasticity kind of not voluntary movement you see when they're trying to activate doing something. When they get on the activity, those reflexes super slow down. In fact, I don't know if you guys saw Ryan when he's pedaling. It's very difficult to say that he has anything. And the reason is because once another kind of more automatic motor plan kicks in, those spasticity reflexes slow down significantly because it takes over another set of plan that is not up here but is more of the spinal cord. So what I'm trying to say is that even though she might be struggling or getting frustrated, maybe offering alternatives and seeing how she can experiment with other things would maybe unlock the possibility for her to go back to that other toy or the wheels and do it differently, even when she is the same age, not like years later. And then in terms of the gripping or not gripping, there are adaptations that can be done with kind of Velcro. So where you can also have like a little half kind of glove, and there is a little Velcro, and then you can put a Velcro on the thing. It's not so restrictive; they can come off very easily, but it is allowing them to kind of have a little bit of a point of support. And I do see that there is someone in our group right here in the call that is a special adaptive physical therapist. So with a lot of experience. Vicky, I don't know if you have any other ideas here, but Brian and Vicky and Mara, if you guys wanted to also complement this, I do think that it also covers some of the aspects of the other questions that I'm seeing in the chat.
Something I was thinking about was possibly magnets.
Uh-huh.
You could use magnets on the handlebars, and then you could have some weighted gloves. That's a way that they could also hold on to, and you could do that the same with the shoes, because I have that same issue with all my babies. Their feet don't stay on, so I use magnets on their shoes and then on the pedal to attempt to keep it on. Another issue I have is a lot of my kids are nonverbal, so engaging them to get their feedback is at times difficult. So I have to go a lot with body language too. They also make these little scooters that you use your hands and you go back and forth, and that motion makes it go. Yeah,
Yep.
back and forth motion. My little guys like that as well, and I get permission from the principals that we can terrorize the hallways when our kids are riding the bikes. And it also helps to include my kids with the other kids, and it's an excellent way to break down some of those barriers between kids with disabilities and kids without disabilities, because the regular education kids at times don't understand why my kids act or do physically the way they do, and it makes for great conversations about that. And I usually end up having to tell the regular ed kids to back up, Jack, and let my kids play, because they want to be part of that group too.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Vicky. That is really, really helpful. And I don't know if you see the chat too from where you are, but there are some questions about what type of bikes and training wheel bikes that are lighter. If you have any of that information, you want to put it in the chat, that will be great. I don't have that information. I don't know anyone else. And Maddie, I pass it on to you. You have something.
Thanks, Patty. Yeah, Kate, I just wanted to add, I think that one of the principles that Mara and I were really trying to bring forward in this is the importance of both variation, a lot of variety, so you can try different kinds of, a scooter, for instance. You could have the handlebars of the scooter higher or lower. You can really mix it up. And then the other thing is really following your daughter's leads. So, like, maybe that she starts to use the scooter with one hand, and that's starts to feel the process of managing herself in that situation through it might look different from what you might expect. That's all. And like being willing to to go with her interest, I think is also part of what we're after in this way of supporting, looking at what they're doing, supporting, and then growing and expanding from there. So just want to bring it back to that.
Move
Excellent.
on to Malika. Do you have your question, Malika? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name.
Who?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a Melitza. Yes. So I have a 18-month-old, and he just recently, like a week ago, started using. It's like a balance bike. It has this double wheel behind, but it's a little bit between like a balance bike and yeah, it's just a sit-on toy, but he can go very fast. And we were actually surprised how much he wanted to go very fast and how quickly he learned to use it. So I'm just interested if there are any tips, like ideas of what could I do with an 18-month-old except for this bike to help him, yeah, with his movements.
So that same scooter that you saw, the green one that Orion was on, it's called the Micro Mini, and it's
Okay.
really for kids as young as, I think, 2 years old. So
Okay.
you could start with it, and I actually like having those kinds of things in the house or apartment to start with, and then the kid can play with it and climb on it, climb off it, and they can't go too far or too fast because they're in the house. And then once they get more interested, then start to go to the park. But having a variety of things to ride on is really, it's actually pretty accessible because kids grow through these quickly. So it's very easy to get them high quality ones secondhand, because no kid has used it for more than 6 months or a year before they move on to the next one. So we're not encouraging a big expense, but having at least 2 or 3 options of different ride-on toys, one where you're standing, you're sitting, just encourages more are, and then it makes
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
I see. Mara, I don't know if you have any others. I see a question. And it's great to see in the chat, by the way, that there is people already exchanging. One of the things we encourage to do in this community is that we want a community. So if you guys have questions for each other, you know that when you write on the chat, you can also direct the question, connect. And if this helps you to also take it off this setup, just please feel free to do that, to network and to answer the questions. I see Agnieszka, you have a question. Do you want to ask the question directly?
Well, I just a comment, oftentimes he's not interested in anything that's hard, and it's hard, bike, the hand, the pedal slips off. So he just forget it. A minute later, he's back on the scooter because he doesn't even want to try it or give it a. So as I'm listening to you, just follow again. I'm trying to encourage him. I'll try again. So should I just kind of let it be and have it be available and just follow his lead, right?
I think so. I actually, Artemis is Orion's mom, and she's happy to answer. And I was gonna ask her to answer your other question about the higher quality bikes and lighter bikes are actually helpful. So Artemis, can you speak to that?
Sure. Hey, everyone. We're not Greek gods. I just don't know when Orion wants to Google himself one day, whether his whole medical history might come up. To your question, I'm going to put in the chat the 2 green and blue scooters, because to Mara's point, she was the one who showed me, wow, the blue scooter you got, just because it was a size up, actually has the ability to steer. It moves the front wheels, which in the first scooter was more fixed. And that was a big part, when he put it all together, that he had already learned steering in this isolation when he didn't have to worry about biking and everything else. And then in terms of equipment, gosh, it's so tough because really the world is unfair, but we're able to we bought it secondhand, a very lightweight bike. So like the red bike that you saw, it's a 16/8 wheel that's only 13 pounds, and it's $450 full price that we got on Craigslist for like 215. But I do think where these areas of like, gosh, it's so hard, but it's like a big deal, like biking is a big deal. And it's it's like he'll have that bike for a while. His sister learned on it. It was for us UC investment. And honestly, before I talked to Mara and she said, no, don't sell it yet, he might go back and forth, I posted it for like, like $200 or something, 180. We've had it for like 2 years. I got like 3 inquiries already. So when you buy it secondhand, you could just resell it too, because equipment like that works. And I'll give you the parent perspective a little bit, and cut me off, Mara, at any time, because I want to leave time for questions. But and I'm so glad that you can't see me, because I may cry, because like as families know, like everything is harder, but the accomplishment sweeter. But this was such a dramatic, and I'm like not a subtle person, so I really need to be hit on the head, but it was such like a dramatic example that has stayed with me in terms of how nonlinear, and how much Mara told me when I was digesting his biking accomplishment. She said, I believe in learning given time space. And he started on the balance bike with his sister at like 2 or 3. I was thrilled. He was on that regular 12-inch balance bike. I was like, great, he's got this. He's gonna meet it. I have such expectations. I have such ableism. I have such, agenda in my play with him, because I want every moment to count. And then when he lost interest and didn't glide, and at 4 years old, when his sister went, pedal biked, and she gave up her bike with training wheels, a 16-inch, and he got into that. And for 2 years, he only wanted to ride the bike with training wheels. I was so disappointed, because I thought it really kept him back. But in fact, in retrospect, it was really helping him figure other things out, like placing his foot so it didn't turn out and slip off. He had the stability. And then, he did end up putting it together. And it was so nonlinear. It so went against my expectations. And there were so many things that I knew, like from what Dr. Mussolino said, like, hey, like, is it fun? Go out for nature walks. Mara and Maddie, both of whom have worked with Orion through the years. But I just like didn't really believe it. I was like, no, we're going to do push-ups until we like throw up, right? But like the 2 instances that were breakthroughs had play involved and self-motivation. Like the moment that Orion returned to the balance bike after 2 years that Mara describes, I wasn't there, and she could provide some more context on it, but she described it as like he was in a new setting. He didn't have other people that were his familiar playmates and equipment around, so he tried it. And then she actually made it like gamified for him, rather than have the expectation, okay, like do the balance bike. She said, could you go to the mailbox? Oh, could you go fast on it? Could you slow down? Like she gamified it. And then he did get that like positive reinforcement for gliding. And subsequently, every single day, he's wanted to get out on the balance bike. That was like the real turning point to me. Like, wow, he's so excited about it. He's so self-motivated. I don't have to make him do exercises. He's driven. And then the moment his dad helped him pedal bike, also had play in it. It wasn't like forced. He was gliding on the balance bike already, but he loves to go fast. So his dad goes, well, why don't I push you so you go extra fast? And he was like, awesome. And he pushed. And then his dad said, well, we have the red bike. Let's do 1 circle around and I'll push you. And he said, okay, well, all right, I'll try it. But he didn't really love it, but he then got pushed and he had his feet on the pedals, not like using it like a balance bike. And then his dad said, well, why don't you just pedal, because your feet are on there anyway? But he was still being pushed, and he has this need for speed, and it was so fun. And then once he started pedaling, he had the balance, because everything was already being worked on a different ways. So I really think about that, and I'm now trying to apply that mindset that development is nonlinear. The timelines are not, typical like expectations, and a lot of it has to be like, like a documentary filmmaker, like just waiting for the panda to act. Like you need to sit on your hands a little bit. But like he has some trouble reading right now because he has a CVI, a visual processing stuff, but he's really interested in maps. So I'm like, okay, how can I think about this in this nonlinear way, like the way I can apply his bike riding or some other play. Anyway.
Excellent. Thank
you so
much. It is such a refreshing and very different perspective to really see the experience from the parent side. I do want to give a little bit of time for Elise. Do you want to ask your question about tummy time and encouraging weight bearing, reaching? What do you want to ask? The more specifics?
Hi, yes. So I have a 3-month-old stroke survivor, and he has right-sided weakness. So he is always shifting all of his weight to his left in tummy time, and always crying about it. And I'm very much like the last speaker was. I'm like, I'm going to have an agenda and be very strict on like tucking your shoulders and propping you up and being very, I guess, aggressive with correcting him. And the first speaker in the very beginning was talking about that child and their tummy time and making it more, playful. But at this age, I just didn't know how I could encourage him to reach for things with his weak side or weight bear on that weak side, because I feel like I have to just force it,
Excellent question, and this is what I meant with. And please look at the road. I see that you're driving, but just you can listen to us. This is what comes up from the clinic a lot, and I hear it from my own colleagues, and everybody's trained that a 3-month-old or a 2-month-old needs to be given belly time to have the possibility to experience other things that, because we are now asked to put kids on their back to sleep, they are not usually experiencing. Just to be clear, 20 years ago, we had the opposite recommendation for sleeping, and kids had a different motor development because they were more on their bellies from the very get-go. But the point that you're bringing, and I have to say, is that if the kid is doing something with the belly time and is just trying to turn, it might be that this is not the time for belly time for, it's him, no? Is it a boy?
Yeah, it's a boy.
Okay. It might not be the time for him to be on his belly. And this sounds like really difficult with early interventions and doctors telling you, no, belly time, and reaching and using the hand, encouraging to use the hand. We have a series of videos of many kids with the same hemiplegia. And what you will see, if you take gravity against it, when the baby, when he is on his belly, he uses a lot of effort to keep his head up so he's not suffocating. And to do that, he has to inhibit everything else. And that would impair the ability to use the arms, more even the one that he has affected. So if you take gravity away and you put him on his back, and the play is to have things that, as you saw Maddie doing, go from the side that he has ease accessing to the side that he has less ease accessing, then his interest will be on that object. So that's one way to encourage it. Putting him on the side, so the side that is affected is going towards gravity, not against gravity. So you can put a toe in the floor and put them on their side, and you'll see a lot more going on with that arm, just because you got the trunk control out of the way. So trying to get them to sit, and when you're doing tummy time, a little bit of the idea is you do tummy time, you start lifting, and then you get ready to start sitting by 6-8 months of age. That may get on the way of using that hand. And we just want that to happen, not to sit to happen, because there is no agenda to get him to sit. He will sit, he will walk, and he will talk. But he has to be able to experience everything to do it with more mastery, with a better ability, and the possibility that he has with that ability. So take gravity away, and even sometimes is putting him on the belly, but you supporting him, sometimes even doing it in your arm, put him on the side so he can access. Use mirroring, so shadows is something that catches the attention. I think Mara has excellent videos, if she wants to share, of her daughter at that time where you're talking about, and how to let that arm do what it needs to do and experience the world, but without putting them in a position where a lot of the work has to go on just the trunk and to head the head up. So I'm kind of going against to probably what you're hearing from your providers, but it's a common thing to encourage something because they need that experience. I'm not saying they don't, but you have to measure if it's what is trying to, the baby's trying to do is trying to get off that position. Let them be on whatever position they're comfortable in, and then provide an experience with something else that could bring that side of the world, that arm into play. And the more you play, and for the 18-month-old question, a lot of the experiments could be just blocks and things that are soft, not too soft to be dangerous, in the floor. Like there is a lot of play in the floor that really helps development. And being outside, again, the textures, the size, the colors, the weather could be also very, very nourishing to the brain development, to this network forming process. I don't know if I answer a little bit the question. I bet Mari and Mara, you guys have more to say about this.
It was really great hearing you, Patty. And thanks for your question, Elise. I think that what Patty's describing is it's another aspect of what we talked about, which is really being willing to pull away from the initial, from the goal, right? You have a goal which is appropriate and makes sense. You want him to be on his belly and to be using his both arms, both sides of himself. And for us to be willing to back off from that and give him an experience where he can have less of a heightened demand, and what Patty's describing in terms of gravity and having to manage yourself against gravity on your belly, it makes it harder to learn something new. So yeah, I think giving him opportunities on his side, on his back, with things around him, to begin to fill in that map of himself, his environment, to get interested in actually going to his belly. Because the more he's put there, if he doesn't like it, it makes it harder for him to actually want to be there, right? So so that's kind of a, I mean, there's a lot, I mean, it's a complex question you're asking, but I think us being willing to back off a bit and giving them opportunities that are less strenuous, less demanding, so that they can begin to fill in those details in those more gentle situations, and then he can apply it in the more in the later developmental positions.
So when he's doing his tummy time, should I just let him be with his body hanging out on the stronger side? Is that what you mean?
It sounds like he doesn't. How is he? When does he come to his belly himself, or?
No, not yet. No, I'm propping him there. And he usually isn't too mad about it. It's just that he ends up rolling to the left, his strong side, because he's putting all of his weight on his left side.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to put the weight on the right. So like I try to shimmy him, to force gravity to put weight on the right, and he like still finds a way to tip over to that left. And I just worry about creating like a super imbalance by letting him go and put all that weight on the left all the time.
I think that, I guess one way that I think about it sometimes, at least, is that if we're putting our child in a situation where we see the increased difference between the two sides, like it gets more exaggerated, it could be an indication that the demand is a little too high in that situation. So yeah, I mean, I think it is kind of radical what Patty and what we're talking about, which is being willing to back away from that pressure to have him do the thing that he's supposed to do now, and give him the opportunity to fill in the sensation and the use of his less developed or less mapped side in the situations where that's more accessible. So it does meaning giving, kind of backing away from putting him on his belly, or also you can have him on your chest, leaning on you. You can lean back and you can hold him, even just getting him interested in turning to see your face over here and turning to see your face over here. That's the beginning of shifting the weight, of orienting and sensing that there is a left side, there is a right side to his world. And it's harder to learn that when it's just him plopped on his belly and he's trying to manage the whole situation.
I think that's an excellent little tip. Your body, and mostly in this age, at least, it's a lot of the work that the baby is going to be doing is also with the body of the parents. So by sensing the body of the provider, of the caregiver, is that they develop that sense. So there is a lot of experiences that he could be doing with you when he's feeding, whichever is the way that he's feeding. Sometimes putting the affected side against your body, so there is also touching. Sometimes letting it be so it can kind of caress or move or just hang in there. It doesn't matter, but changing kind of your interface with that baby and touching it a lot, and putting him on your chest. Honestly, is probably the best intermezzo between back and put it in the belly, in the floor, or in any playground or anything that you have, because that is a much more anatomical. The breast also that you have will provide some support for the upper chest, and there is a ton of different interests if you are the object to be explored. And you can play with other things and toys when he's in the floor if you want to try it, to put him on the belly. But yes, we are encouraging you to maybe not be on the belly yet. If you are seeing that the response is always to try to get out of it, you could be, as you said, making him exercise only one side of the body if you keep doing that, and the only thing that he is interested in is to turn out. And then we can just make it a gym for the only part of the body that he's interested to use at this point in time. So I think like putting him on the side, it also could work very nicely. Some kids, if you just have them on the side and you support them, and you saw the support on the back and giving them some kind of sensation in their back, can release the tone of the trunk, and that can allow hand to work, which is something that you're trying to see if he can explore with that hand. And I'm sure he will be able to explore more if he's not on his belly trying to lift his head up. He's very young also, so I want you to be kind of patient. And it is a choice to take or not the recommendation of the provider, and I would just use his level of stress as an information of what's going on with him. And this is for everybody. Whatever is the task that you're in it, a task is a really bad, the play, the experience that you're with your child, try to see how you can make it pleasant. Stress impairs learning, and that's also been very well studied. So if a kid doesn't feel safe, or it doesn't feel relaxed or joyful about the experience, that experience is probably not mapping, not getting in, and it would not be something that they could learn. And this goes to the bike people. If it's stressful, just move away for a while, leave it there, try to go back as you can in a playful manner, and see when they feel less stress and safer to try it, to ready to experiment. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. And I think Mari and Mara, this is going to be the ask from us. A lot of what you do is not necessarily accessible everywhere, but there are resources that you have put together. There are resources that you access and you send your families. If there is anything that you could give us and leave us with, it could be put in the YouTube channel also as a follow-up, handouts, reading, or links, where we could also see a little bit more about how we think about this framework of learning and experience and rehabilitation through experience and play. And for adaptive sports and outdoors, which I always say in every single webinar, is to me is the easiest and lowest in demand, in sense of like, how do I find this? Which is not necessarily so easy. And we have taken a parents' initiative to try to map this across the country at least, and see if we can provide more information locally. But getting outside and trying to be yourself if it's a baby, in the floor with them, in different environments, with different people, or as much as COVID restrictions allow, will change that learning experience and will provide that variety that we need to unlock these little things that seem impossible, guys. If I tell you Ryan did not look that he was going to be a happy guy on a bike ever, and he is thriving with his bike experience, and that's because he's been allowed to have the process. So I don't know, Mara, if we have maybe a couple of more minutes for another question.
Yeah. there are a couple parents who asked about falling and kids who are tentative around experimenting or feeling like it's too hard. So again, it's a little bit paradoxical, but I think if you back off on the expectation, so the child doesn't feel pressured to try the bike or the whatever, but that you have an option. I mean, it's work. So Orion's mom will tell you that every time they met me, they had 2 or 3 bikes in the back of the trunk of the car, or a scooter and 2 bikes. And so there was always an option. Where we live, there are 4 seasons. So sometimes there's no biking in the winter, and then the child is all of a sudden significantly older, and maybe they see peers doing something that they then want to try. So that's another thing. And then the surface that you're on. So when Orion first took off with the pedaling, he was on a track that had a forgiving, I think, rubberized surface, and he fell, but it was okay. And so I think parents actually need to back off and let their kids learn to fall. And I think that's particularly challenging when you have a child who has had a brain injury, because you're worried they're going to hit their head again or hit their head and injure themselves in some other way. But the fear of falling, I think, is more damaging to the nervous system than learning how to fall and get back up. And so I'll just tell one more story about Orion, which is that the last time I saw him on Monday, he fell and he told his cousin fell and actually cut her thumb. And he said, when I fall, I just get right back up. And so maybe you could do that too. And he was like, with all this advice, from 6-year-old to 6-year-old, saying sort of be resilient. And I think that we can be overprotective of our children who've had stroke or other brain injury, and learning to let them fall and discover their own way to get back up is really important. Obstacle courses are great, climbing walls are great, being on grass, being on different kinds of playgrounds that have different surfaces. So again, variety, and make it safe and fun. Gym mats, like all kinds of places where kids can crash and fall and feel like it's a safe experience.
I just noticed in your telling, Mara, like how the same message I think comes through, which reminds me back to what Elise was asking about tummy time, is this kind of like looking for the like what's not working, and then kind of backing off and finding something else, something different, trying it here, leaning on you here, something on your back, on your side, whatever it is, and filling in those details in other situations, so that then when they come back to the big bike or the tummy time or whatever, they have more there, more of themselves there to engage in the activity.
So, with one comment, I think we are going to be closing this one, and we know that some people had to leave, but this is recorded also to be reviewed, or go back to it if you want to, on the YouTube, which is that we've been talking a lot about how to change the frame of thinking about learning and neurological development, basically. To, instead of going from a linear exercise kind of mind frame, which happens to work for some of the developed brains, adult people, and not for many, we think that the concepts that we provided is not that you missed out on something if you haven't had it, your kid is 5 or 3 or 2 or whatever, and you didn't do this. And it's, if you think about it, it's really useful even for your own learning. So there is always learning happening. And most importantly, there is always motivation of something that you're really longing for. And if you let that inform what could be happening that can provide opportunities, experiments towards that yearning. That is never going to get you too harmful, and is always going to provide a lot of more experience and opportunities to develop and to achieve more joy, which we've been talking of it like all throughout, and you heard the mom and you saw the kids, but at the end of the day, we better be joyful than right, happy than right. And this is something that sounds really difficult when you're a very educated or eager parent that wants to provide. But it's very important that what we're doing is for the aim of that kid and that person to really experience in a joyful way their activities, their life. So with that, I think we're gonna close now. We're gonna promise that we'll put some materials and links available to you guys for exploring these more. We are very aware that this is not necessarily a therapy that you can go and get your insurance to pay for, and you might not find the therapist, but we do think there is a lot of meat here, food for, and meat is not the right way, it's my Spanish that comes on the way. So food for a lot of opportunities as parents and caregivers of these kids in their journey. So thank you again, everybody, for joining. This is a Stroke Awareness Month, so we're gonna be every Friday, or 3 Fridays of the 4, and then we're working on also putting together a little video of the life of a stroke thriver that one of our stroke thrivers is gonna do himself. So he's gonna record and edit himself. So there's gonna be a lot of activity, and we hope that this is useful, and we also hope your feedback in the post-event survey, so we can continue to do this better and bring other experts also that you want to hear about, and have always the vetting of the medical community as well. So with that, thank you so much for participating, for your questions, for sharing the journey with us, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye.
Mother's Day.
Everyone.
Happy Mother's Day. Yes.
Happy Mother's Day.
Bye.